So now it's time for our deep dive into the future of the BBC with Andrew Eborn, futurist and barrister. What exactly is going on? The UK government set up some panel where they're going to decide where it goes for the next 100 years.
Well, exactly.
Is that not a bit ambitious of them?
Well, it's certainly ambitious. So they've just celebrated the centenary, 2022.
Yeah.
I hosted a thing for the Royal Television Society looking at the next 100 years.
Right.
And one of the central things is how we're going to fund it.
Right.
But before you do that, you have to say, well, do we need the BBC?
Yes.
Because a lot of people say, well, we've got Netflix, we have so many choices now since the BBC was set up.
Yes.
And the fundamental thing is about just over 20% of the world's population basically has a democracy and a free press.
That much?
I know, but it's quite alarming figures. So there has never been a time when we need to have an independent news source. And that's the sort of starting point.
Right.
The question then is, how do you finance it?
Right. Well,
And
the question is it independent?
Well, there are issues about it's supposed to be,
right?
And what
but
they would
you can't
argue,
just say it's independent and then go that's fine, because a lot of people now don't trust the BBC for its news.
That's the other issue. You sort of turn around and say, and they basically in their defence, when I quizzed them about this, they've always said, well, every government criticises us, which means we're getting it right.
No, it doesn't. Well, it means they're getting it wrong and everybody can see it. Because that's unfortunately their attitude, because they think from the inside that they're, somehow very, very well balanced. But they can't be, because at the end of the day, they are an incredibly monocultured organisation. They don't really employ people from the working classes in this country. They don't really employ people who haven't been to university. They don't bother employing people who have got particularly right-wing views. They might have people in the upper echelons of management who would be considered to have right-wing views. But most of the journalists, by and large, are the sort of product of a very good education, probably a degree from a decent university, and they have a very specific view of the world. Yeah. And I don't think they can avoid saying, understanding that, but they don't like to admit it.
Well, I think, and also if you look back a few years, what they will say, actually lots of people had traditional BBC posh voices. Yeah. And now what they're trying to do is push things out to the region, including the production. And
but they're still all middle class. I mean, you can have a middle class Mancunian voice, you can have a middle class Leeds voice, you can have a middle class Somerset voice. At the end of the day, most of the people who do well on the BBC have melded their voice into whatever it is now. Yeah. I was watching Question Time the other night, and Fiona Bruce was saying that she's originally a girl from the Wirral. You'd never know it, because she doesn't sound like she's from the Wirral, and that can only be deliberate. People change their voices deliberately. Well,
and that's absolutely an issue. So you need to look at that sort of stuff. The whole idea of the BBC is supposed to be universality. You turn around and say it should apply to absolutely everybody. Yeah. Now, the licence fee's just gone up on the 1st of April. Yes. It went up by 6.6%. It's now £169.50 a year.
And that, multiplied by millions, must produce an awful lot of money.
Well, it does. I mean, I've got the stats here. It's basically they've got 3.74 billion, which accounted for about 65% of the BBC's total income.
Right.
The rest of it, they get.
But what I'm saying is, by going up 6%, that must be giving them how much more?
Well, actually, because production costs, what they're saying, has been frozen for a couple of years. And production costs have obviously escalated.
Oh, so they're telling us that they're producing things more expensively, so that's why they have to put the price up. You see, none of it makes any sense. Talk to an ordinary person in the street and they go, well, first of all, we don't need them to put their production costs up. We don't require them to make programmes necessarily. For example, I was reading this week, they're going to do a new edition of Wolf Hall, which of course is going to be more diverse and more woke. Did very well last time around. Yeah. But, why would be my question. Why do they need to make these sort of period dramas? They don't.
Well, you're right, and that's where the competition is. You see the Netflix and the Amazon and so on and so forth. When you're getting on the international stage, I'm going down to Cannes for the TV market in a couple of days' time.
Nice too.
Well, you come back from New York.
Yeah, but I was on holiday. You call this work?
My whole life's a holiday.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But the reality is that's the TV market, and the BBC is one of the biggest, most respected brands in the world.
You see, again, I take the view that the BBC is for domestic purposes only, a news-gathering organisation, and maybe, a broadcaster. What it's not is a producer of drama. You can start off by stopping making dramas and getting rid of the Director General. That'd save a few quid. Andrew Eborn, thank you very much indeed. That is The World according to Mike Graham. More coming up after this. Well, that's all we've got time for on The World according to Mike Graham for this week. But don't worry, we'll be back next week at the same time with more from my world.